My name is Nicole Slowey and I am the Operations Director here at Qdos Contractor. I'm responsible for all of the services in respect of IR35 reform, both in the public sector and the private sector, and I'm working with all of our corporate and commercial clients, public sector bodies and recruitment agencies to help organisations compliantly manage their new responsibilities under the IR35 legislation. This video today is to address some of the FAQs in respect of IR35 reform. IR35 reform, which is coming to the private sector in April 2020, will see end client organisations and recruitment agencies that engage limited company contractors becoming responsible for the IR35 status determination and potential IR35 tax liability. Now, this is a change which mirrors reform which was undertaken in the public sector in 2017. In terms of the reform itself, ultimately it will see those end client organisations carry the responsibility for actually asserting an IR35 status determination on the contractors that they engage, whilst also having a requirement to share that status determination with the recruitment agencies that supply those contractors, which are referred to as fee payers, and also the contractors themselves, ensuring that they provide rationale for the decision that they've actually reached at. As far as the recruitment agencies are fee payers in the supply chain, the responsibility that they have is in respect of actually applying that determination. So for example, if a contractor has been determined inside IR35, it means they need to be treated as an employee for tax purposes, so that recruitment agency or fee payer company has a requirement to ensure that the necessary employment taxes are deducted from the payments that are made to contractors. When it comes to organisations making determinations on the contractor populations that they have in situ, and both in consideration of what their new business as usual processes are going to be, there is a very real risk and quite a big challenge out there to avoid organisations making blanket determinations on an entire population of contractors. We saw a huge amount of this happening in the public sector when reform was introduced in 2017, and making blanket determinations is not considered compliant in line with the legislation itself. IR35 case law and other areas which are required to be considered when looking at the status determinations of contractors does require assessments to be made on an individual case-by-case basis. So clients engaging in blanket determinations isn't compliant with the legislation and could actually be detrimental from a reputational perspective and a commercial perspective for those organisations as well, as it's likely where a blanket determination is made, the client will suffer a potential mass walkout of contractors within their organisation. There are a couple of recruitment challenges that both end clients and recruitment agency companies are going to face when considering the new IR35 or off-payroll legislation come April 2020. Organisations are going to have a requirement to advertise positions as either inside or outside IR35 going forward, so they will need to consider introducing processes that will give them the ability to make a high-level determination on those roles at the point where they go to actually recruit. Additionally, where they are recruiting for a role which is considered inside IR35, organisations may find that they are not attracting talent that they previously did when contractors were applying IR35 to themselves. So the things that will need to be looked at in respect of that will be potentially the rates that are being offered to contractors in respect of understanding the financial ramifications a contractor will be subject to if they're going to be operating inside IR35. When it comes to the employment rights piece, HMRC have been very clear in that there is no association or link between a contractor being considered an employee for tax purposes and any employment rights being associated to that determination. The challenge with that is that many contractors who have gone through IR35 reform in the public sector have actually felt so aggrieved by determinations that they have had made on their circumstances that they have actually made claims for employment rights either against the recruitment agencies that they're working via, umbrella companies that they're working via, or even end client organisations themselves. There have been two notable cases of that specifically in the public sector. Whilst the scale of the private sector is much larger, the expectation is that the volume of those types of claims will in fact be higher, and that organisations, both agency and client side, do need to think about how best they can prepare. Our advice to those organisations would be that where you are engaging contractors in an assessment process, or in fact engaging in an internal assessment process which doesn't include contractors, you should look to make sure that the assessments that you are making are considered fair, they are compliant, and that they are transparent, and where possible you are looking to engage with all of the relevant parties in the supply chain and actually arriving at that determination. So where contractors themselves feel that they have been given a fair opportunity to have their status considered, are less likely to either A, walk out, or B, actually make claims against the organisation for the likes of unpaid holiday pay or unlawful deductions in respect of earnings. Check employment status for tax, or the CESS tool as it's more commonly known, is HMRC's own piece of guidance to help organisations actually make determinations on contractors. The tool itself has come under a huge amount of scrutiny in the market, from both experts to contractors, from clients to recruitment agencies. Whilst HMRC like to make claims that they will stand by a CESS determination, we wouldn't recommend that organisations or contractors rely solely upon a CESS determination as proof of an assessment being undertaken. There are lots of issues with CESS. These tend to focus around a couple of areas, such as there being limitations in a digital decision, and that an answer of a few questions can actually mean that your CESS determination is arrived at in only 6 questions. The fact that in doing that it doesn't give the opportunity for a contractor's engagement to be considered in the round goes against any expert's approach to actually determining IR35 status, when not only do you need to consider the contract and the engagement in question, but how the contractor is actually in business on their own account. The other challenge with CESS is that it excludes a key status test, which is mutuality of obligations. The fact that HMRC has chosen to exclude that from the tool undermines its ability to arrive at an accurate determination. Further to that, there is an over-reliance on substitution within CESS. Yes, that is a key consideration when it comes to determining IR35 status, but it can't be arrived at in isolation of only the substitution point, which is why we would always make a recommendation that both client organisations and agency organisations look to engage with a tool which will give contractors the fairest opportunity for their entire circumstances to be considered in order to arrive at an accurate determination which reflects the reality of their working arrangement as well as being in business in their own account. When it comes to making preparations for the reform, contractors should look to start with having discussions with both the recruitment agencies and their clients. It's important that you're able to establish exactly what it is that your clients and fee payers intend on doing by way of managing their responsibilities under the reform. It's likely that they may be having discussions within the businesses internally, having project plans and project teams managing through various different action plans within the organisations to get themselves ready. Once you've had the opportunity to have a discussion with either your client or your agency, it would be useful to get a bit of an indication from them as to a timeline from when they're actually going to start making determinations, so that you can actually start to prepare and think about your wider options. When it comes to thinking about your own status determination, it's likely, like we've said, that your clients and your recruitment agencies will require you to go through an assessment process. It would be recommended that you do consider your status in isolation on your own. You can look at this by engaging with an organisation like Qdos to have your contractual terms checked, as well as your working practices. This will give you a real robust piece of information to help shape those discussions that you have with your client and your recruitment agency when it comes to you actually having your own status assessed. Not only that, but it gives you evidence to use as part of any retrospective HMRC investigation that you may be subject to in the future. Despite the fact that clients and fee payers become responsible for IR35 following April 2020, contractors will still carry a retrospective risk. So it's a useful exercise for you to go through, even if the process that you are managed via your client or your agency supersedes that piece of work. Thank you for listening to our video today. If you would like to hear more information like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for further information and some information to download, please see the links in our description box.